Hello, and welcome to the library's presentation on APA referencing. In this session, we will look at why you should reference, what you should reference, and how to reference correctly. Referencing may seem like a time-consuming addition to your work that you don't really need. However, there are three main reasons why it's important to reference. Correct referencing and the creation of a good reference list or bibliography demonstrates that you have read widely around your subject and researched your work in depth. It also allows the marker of your work to check the accuracy of any statements you make by checking your references. And finally, if you don't reference your work properly, it can be interpreted as plagiarism. Plagiarism means presenting the words, ideas, images, photographs, diagrams, or any other material as your own work without acknowledging the original source and the original author. So what do you reference? Well, basically absolutely every piece of work you use to write your assignment or piece of work. This may include information from books, websites, online journal articles, video clips, newspapers, and much more. This is why it's really important to note down all your sources as you go along. You must reference absolutely everything you use. It can seem quite daunting to know where to begin with referencing. So how do you begin? The first step is to always make detailed notes of any items you use. This will help you to keep track of the resources you've used and also ensure that you have everything you need for your reference list. You can choose to write down the details, or if you prefer, you can open a new Word document or similar and record all the details there. Both methods will ensure you have all the information you need. At this stage, you don't need to worry about how the information is presented. We will come on to that later in this presentation. So what is a reference? In APA, a reference is made up of two parts. Part 1, what goes in the text itself, and Part 2, what goes in the reference list. These two parts must correspond. So if something appears in your text, you must have a corresponding entry in the reference list and vice versa. We will look at both of these in more detail over the next few slides. Let's start with what goes in the text itself. This is known as in-text referencing. This simply means that you should briefly refer to the original source of your information at the appropriate point in the text. The only information you need in the text itself is the author's surname and date of publication. Any other information will be found in the corresponding entry in the reference list. So, you may have used the quote shown in the first example. After the quote, you would place the author's surname and the date of publication in brackets. This tells your reader who the original author is. Similarly, you can write the surname and date of publication in a more flowing manner into the text as seen in the second example. You will note too in this example that the original quote has been paraphrased, i.e. it has been written in your own words, so you no longer need the quote marks. However, even if you have paraphrased, the original work must still be credited to the original author, as the idea still belongs to them, even though you have rewritten the actual words. Just a quick reminder that regardless of whether the information you have used is a direct quote or work you have paraphrased yourself, it should be treated in exactly the same way in the text. Now we come to what goes in the reference list itself. A reference list is an alphabetical listing of every source that you have used to write your piece of work. It is on a separate sheet or sheets at the back of every piece of work you hand in. How you write the information for the reference list will depend on the type of material you have used. It would be great to say that every type of material was done in exactly the same way, but sadly this isn't the case. We are going to look at the 4 most common types of information you may use in more detail. For further information on other types of material, please consult our Library APA Referencing Guide, which is available online on the library website. In APA, the rules state that you must apply a hanging indent to each entry in your reference list. This simply means that the first line of each entry is left aligned as normal, however the second and subsequent lines are indented. This will become clearer when you see the examples to follow. Rather than having to manually create each hanging indent when using Microsoft Word, you can simply select your reference entry, right-click, select Paragraph from the list. A box will open and you should select Hanging from the drop-down menu labelled Special. Let's look at books first. In the box is the exact format you need to follow for a book. We've also given you a couple of examples too, as you may find it easier to follow the examples rather than the format itself. The first thing you should do when referencing a book is to open the book up and look at the title page. This is usually the first or second page in on the right-hand side. All the information you will need to reference a book will be found on the title page and on the back of the title page. You should start with the author or editor. Pick out the names from the title page and write them as surname, comma, first initial, full stop. If you have more than one author or editor, you should do the same for each one and simply list them in the order they appear on the title page. So even if you have 10 authors, you still need to list them all in the reference list. This is followed by the date of publication in brackets. You will find the year on the back of the title page. Please make sure that you're using the date of the edition that you have in front of you. After this comes the title. Again, this should be taken directly from the title page and should include any subtitles. The title and any subtitles should be written in italics. Then comes the edition, if there is one. If there is an edition on the title page, you should put it in here. If there is no mention of an edition, you must assume you have a first edition and you can leave this bit blank. The edition should be in brackets. Next comes the name of the publisher. You will probably find the name of the publishing company at the bottom of the title page. Otherwise, it will be on the back of the title page. End with a full stop and you will have the perfect book reference. The next source we'll look at is websites. Similarly to what you've just done for a book, you need to find and write down the right information in the right order with the right punctuation. You begin with the author of the website. This is simply whoever is responsible for the content of the site. Quite often this is not necessarily an individual person, rather it may be an organisation, a business or a charity. So for example, the Royal College of Nursing or the King's Fund. Next is the date, and this is the date of the information. To find this, if it's not immediately obvious from the page you're on, you can try going back to the home page, scrolling down to the bottom and looking for a last updated or last amended date, or even a copyright date will do. The date should be in brackets and should be as detailed as possible. The title should come next. This is simply whatever it says at the top of the page that you're on. The title should be written in italics and followed by a full stop. Then you should type the word retrieved followed by the date you accessed the website. Follow this with a comma and write the word from. Then copy and paste the URL of the page you're taking the information from into your citation. You will now have your perfect website reference. We will now look at online journal articles. This is similar to referencing a website, but you just need a few extra details. You need to start with the author or authors of the article itself. Similarly to how you did with a book, the names need to be inverted. So surname, comma, then first initial, full stop. Do this for each author. Then comes the year. This is the year of the article and should be placed in brackets. The title of the article comes next, followed by a comma. Next comes the name of the journal itself. The volume, part number, and page numbers come next. It should be written as the volume number, then the part or issue number in brackets, comma, then the number or numbers of the pages. End with a full stop. Finally, you should copy and paste the URL. You now have a perfect online journal article reference. You may also have to reference images. This could include photographs, drawings, charts, logos, or diagrams. To do this, you should start with identifying the artist or creator of the work. This can be tricky, as often it isn't clear who has produced the work. If there is no obvious artist or creator, you can use whoever is in charge of the website itself. In the example shown here, I have used University of Dundee, as this was the only information I had, and I had to assume that the image had been created by the University of Dundee. Once you have the author, you should follow this with the date. Similarly to websites, this should be the date of the information. So, for example, the last updated, the last amended date, or the copyright date. This should be in brackets as year, comma, month, date. Next comes the title or name of the image. If there isn't one, give it a suitable name yourself. So for example, something like Change Management Diagram. Right after the title, you need to write the word image in square brackets to immediately identify it. Follow this with a full stop. Finally, end by copying and pasting in the URL, and you will have the perfect image entry in your reference list. Whenever possible, you should quote from the original source. However, this isn't always feasible, and this is where secondary referencing comes in. Secondary referencing is when you want to reference a source that is quoted in something else. We will look at an example next, which should make this clearer. So, for example, the book that you're reading by Neil and Sale, 2022, cites or mentions some work by Tranter and Robertson, 2019, and you want to use that excellent idea in your work. To do this, you will use secondary referencing. In the text, you will mention both the original work and the work you have in front of you. Try to write your reference in a flowing style in your text. However, in the reference list itself, you only need to reference the book you have seen, the Neil and Sale title. Initially, secondary referencing can be a bit tricky, so if you've any queries at all, please contact us at the library and we can advise you. Finally, please remember the following guidelines. With individual authors, the author's name must always go in reverse order, i.e. surname, comma, first initial, full stop. The entries in your reference list should be listed in alphabetical order by the author's surname or the organisation's name. If you have an organisation whose name begins with the or a, you should ignore this for filing purposes. So for example, the Royal College of Nursing would be filed under R for Royal and not T for the. It is also really important to make sure your punctuation is consistent throughout, as this makes up part of your marks in referencing. And please don't forget to indent your citations. If you have any questions about APA referencing, please contact us at the library and we'll be able to advise you. Thank you for listening.